I'll tell you the story. It was a chilly November evening. I had just consummated an unusually hearty dinner, and I was seated alone in the drawing room with my feet up by the fire. At my elbow was a small table with some miscellaneous apologies for dessert, and several bottles of wine, spirit, and liqueur. In the morning, I had been reading Wilkie's Epigoniad, Barlow's Columbiad, Griswold's Curiosities, Lamartine's Sicily. In short, I now felt a trifle stupid. I attempted to rouse myself with several glasses of Chateau Lafite. That failing, I betook myself to a stray newspaper in despair. Having perused the column of Dogs Lost, and the column of Houses to Let, and the 2 columns of Wives and Apprentices Run Away, well, I set about with great interest on the editorial matter. Having read it over from beginning to end without understanding a word of it, I conceived the possibility of it being in Chinese. So I read it over again from end to beginning. No better result. I was about to throw it away in disgust when the following paragraph aroused my attention. The avenues to death are numerous and strange. A London paper mentions the decease of a man from a singular cause. Ooh. It seems that he was playing at Puff the Dart. The game is played with a needle inserted in some fabric and blown at a target through a tin tube. The man inserted the needle into the wrong end of the tube. Drawing his breath strongly to puff the dart with force, he drew the needle into his throat. It entered the lungs, and in a few days killed him. This is a contemptible falsehood. The leeward scribblings of some pitiable penny-a-liner, some concoctor of accidents in cocaine. No. To an inquiring mind, such as mine, I added in parentheses, it should become apparent at once that the marvelous increase of late in these odd accidents is by far the oddest accident of them all. I myself, henceforth, shall believe nothing that has anything of the singular about it. Mein Gotten, what a fool you bees for that! It's the strangest voice I'd ever heard. At first I took it for a rushing sound in my ears, such as a man sometimes hears when getting very drunk. Or the sound of an empty barrel makes when struck with a stick. The several glasses of Lafite that I had sipped gave me some courage, and I wasn't afraid, but I could see nothing. You must be drunk as the pig, for to not see me here as I sit beside you. Well, I tried the possibility of looking in front of my nose. And there, confronting me across the table, sat a personage. Nondescript, but not altogether indescribable. His body was a rum barrel. There dangled from the nether extremity of the keg a couple of smaller kegs, which must have answered for legs. For arms, there dangled from the upper portion of the carcass 2 tolerably long bottles with their necks outstretched for hands. All the head the monster possessed was one of those Hessian canteens, which looks like a snuff box with a hole in the middle of the lid. Upon its head it wore like a cavalier cap a funnel slouched low over one eye. Through the hole it was emitting certain rumbling and grumbling noises that it evidently intended for intelligible talk. I say you must be drunk as the pig for to not see me. You must be bigger fool than the goose for to not believe what is print in the print. It is the truth. Every word of it. Who are you? How did you get here, and what are you doing here? As for what I be doing here, I be doing what I think proper. As for how I come here, that is my business. As for who I am, that is the thing that I come to show you. Oh, you are a drunken vagabond. I shall summon my footman and he will throw you into the street. That you cannot do. What? Ring to bell? Well, I showed him. I stood up to ring the bell and he hit me. on the head with one of his bottle arms. I sat back down hard. I didn't quite know what to do. Darling, you sit still now and listen. Look upon me. I am the angel of the odd. Odd enough, too. I was always under the impression that angels had wings. Teffing ya! What do you take me for, a chicken? No! No, I'm sure you're not a, chicken. The chicken have the wing, und the owl have the wing, und the imp have the wing, und the head devil have the wing. But I have not the wing, and I am the angel of the odd. Well, what is your business with me? Oh, what a low-bred puppy it must be to ask a gentleman and an angel about his business. This was rather more than I could take, even from an angel. So I grabbed a salt shaker that was near at hand and hurled it at the head of the intruder. Well, either my aim was off or he ducked. All I succeeded in doing was shattering the crystal that protected the clock on the mantelpiece. The angel evinced his sense of the assault by giving me 2 or 3 hard raps on the head with his bottle. This at once reduced me to submission, and, well, I'm ashamed to say that either through pain or vexation there came a few tears to my eyes. Oh, dear, now, don't cry. The man must either be very sorry or very drunk. You must not drink it so strong, yeah? You must take some water with the wine, yeah? And here he refilled my glass of port, which was about half empty, with a colorless liquid from one of his bottles. I saw the label said Kirschenwasser. Aided by the liquid with which the angel refilled my glass several times, I was able to sit back and listen to his extraordinary discourse. It seems that he was the genius whose business it was to bring about the odd accidents that so confound the skeptic. He talked on at great length. I amused myself by sitting back in my chair with my eyes closed, munching raisins and flipping the stems around the room. The angel suddenly construed this action into contempt. He arose into great wrath, swore some vast oath that I didn't really understand, made a low bow, and departed. The departure of the angel afforded me no little relief. I felt inclined to take a nap of some 15 or 20 minutes, which is my usual custom after dinner. I looked at the clock on the mantelpiece. It was 5:30. At 6 o'clock, I had an appointment of consequence that it was necessary that I keep. The policy of insurance for my dwelling place had expired the day before, and some dispute having arisen, I was to meet with the board of directors at 6 to arrange terms for a renewal. I could easily walk to the insurance office in 5 minutes, and my postprandial siestas had never been known to exceed 5 and 20. I composed myself to my slumbers forthwith. Having completed them to my satisfaction, imagine my surprise when, glancing at the clock, I saw that instead of my usual 15 or 20 minutes, I had been sleeping only 3. It still wanted 27 minutes of the hour. I settled into my nap again. Imagine my distress when I woke a second time and saw that it still wanted 27 minutes of the hour. I took out my watch. It was 7:30. Having slept for 2 hours, I was too late for my meeting. That's all right. I'd call in the morning and apologize, but what could have happened to the clock? One of the raisin stems that I had been flipping around the room had flown through the fractured crystal and lodged itself, singularly enough, in the keyhole, thus arresting the motion of the minute hand. A normal accident. The kind of thing that will happen from time to time. I gave the matter no further thought and retired to bed at my usual hour. I placed a candle on the reading stand at the head of the bed and settled in to peruse a few pages of The Omnipresence of the Deity. But I fell asleep in less than 20 seconds, leaving the candle burning as it was. My dreams were full of the angel of the odd. Oh, I thought he stood at the couch and menaced me with bitterest vengeance for my contempt. He removed his funnel cap, forced the funnel down my throat, and proceeded to drown me with an ocean of Kirschenwasser. When I could stand no more, I awoke. Just in time to see a rat running off with the lighted candle from the stand. Not in season to prevent him from escaping with it down his hole. Within moments, a suffocating odor assailed my nostrils, and I perceived that the apartment was on fire. Within minutes, the entire place was wreathed in flames, and all egress was cut off except for the window. The neighbors quickly procured a long ladder, and I was descending in apparent safety, when this hog, about whose entire rotund person there was something of the angel of the odd. When this hog, I say, took it into his head that his left shoulder needed scratching, and he could find no more convenient rubbing post than the ladder. In short, I was precipitated and had the misfortune to fracture my arm. This accident, along with the loss of my insurance and the more serious loss of my hair, the whole of which had been singed off in the fire, these things predisposed me to serious inclinations. I decided it was time to marry. I set about the conquest of a wealthy widow, disconsolate with the loss of her 7th husband. I offered her the balm of my love, and she yielded a reluctant consent. I knelt at her feet in gratitude, and she inclined her luxurious tresses into close contact with those supplied to me, temporarily at least, by Granger. I know not how the entanglement occurred, but it did. I arose with shining head, wigless. She, in wrath and disdain, half buried in alien hair. Thus ended my hopes of the widow. I resolved to set about the conquest of a less implacable heart, and for a time the fates were propitious. And then, seeing my beloved in an avenue thronged with the elite of the city, I hastened to present her one of my best prepared bows, when a particle of dust lodging in my eye rendered me for the moment completely blind. When I could see again, the lady of my beloved passed on by, irreparably affronted at my premeditated rudeness in passing her by ungreeted. I now considered it time to die. So I betook myself to the nearest river, and here, divesting myself of my clothes, for why should we not die as we are born, the only witness being a solitary crow, I stepped toward the water. No sooner had I entered the water than the crow decided to fly off with the most indispensable portion of my apparel. Postponing them for the moment my suicidal designs, I just slipped my nether extremities into the sleeves of my coat, and I ran off after the crow with all of the speed that the circumstances would allow. As I rushed headlong with my nose up in the air, intent only upon the purloiner of my property, I quickly perceived that my feet rested no longer upon terra firma. I had hurled myself over a cliff, and I should no doubt have been dashed to pieces had it not been for my great fortune in grasping the guide rope of a passing balloon. I quickly understood the situation in which I now stood, or rather hung. I endeavored to make my presence known to the aeronaut above me, but either the fool could not or the villain would not hear me. I was about to let go and sink quietly into the sea, when I heard a hollow humming above me. And there, at the edge of the car, leaned the angel of the odd. Help! Oh no, not I. Help yourself and be damned. And he let fall a heavy bottle of Kirschenwasser. Struck me square on the head and made me imagine my brains had been entirely dashed out. I was on the verge of just giving up the ghost with a good grace when he called out, "Hold on! Don't be in such a hurry. Will you take the other bottle? Or have you come to your senses and got sober?" I shook my head twice, once in the negative, indicating that I did not care for the other bottle just at present, and once in the positive, to say that yes, I had come to my senses and got sober. Well then, you believe at last, do you? You believe in the possibility of the odd? Do you believe that I am the angel of the odd? Do you acknowledge that you be the blind drunk and the fool? Then place your right hand in your left hand preacher's pocket in token of your full submission to the angel of the odd. This thing I could not do. In the first place, if I were to let go with my right hand, my left hand being fractured in the fall, I would have to let go entirely. And in the second place, we could have no pants until we had the crow! So I was forced to shake my head in the negative, indicating that I found it inconvenient just at that moment to comply with the angel's very reasonable request. Go to the devil, then. And he drew a sharp knife across the guide rope. As we happened at that moment to be passing over my house, which had been handsomely rebuilt during my peregrinations, I tumbled headlong down the ample chimney and sprawled out in the ashes of an expired fire, senseless. When I recovered, my head was groveled in the ashes. The clock on the mantel said 4 o'clock. At my feet were the ruins of a small table and several desserts and broken bottles. At my head, an empty jug of Kirschenwasser. And thus revenged himself, the angel of the odd.